Hi, this is Pete Thompson. Today we're going to talk about compressed gas cylinders and flammable and combustible liquid safety training. First, we're going to talk about compressed gases. Compressed gases are a high danger because they're compressed and you don't want to get the gas out of the cylinder. So most of the things you see here are about keeping the gas in the cylinder and not letting it out. First of all, remember that make sure that any cylinder you use that the contents are described on the cylinder so that you know it is. Second of all, wherever the gas cylinders are stored, make sure that there's a storage area sign or something indicating where they are. They shouldn't just be left all over the plant so that we don't know where they are or what they are. This is a quick diagram of a typical gas cylinder, and you'll see that there's the cylinder cap, and one thing you should remember is that cylinder cap should always be on top of the cylinder when you're not using it. That way, if it gets knocked over, you won't have a possibility of the cap or the valve getting knocked off, making it into a giant torpedo. And then there's just the basic parts of the valve. There's the hand wheel that turns it on and off. There's the outlet where the material comes out. And then you'll see 4, 5, 6, and 7 are just some information on the different certifications of the cylinder. Whenever a gas is being used or in one place, make sure it's chained up. You see the example in the picture there, just so that they don't tip over. If you find a leaking cylinder, probably the best thing to do is to just get away from it. But if you can, or if it's necessary, you can move it to a safe place and let the plant manager know. But generally, the best idea, like I say, is to just evacuate the area. When you open the valve on the cylinder, or when you're doing anything, make sure you have proper PPE on, which we'll talk about, I think, in a second. But make sure that the valve is pointing away from you so that when you open it, if it comes out quickly, that it doesn't blow right into your face. Also, regulators, you'll see some pictures of regulators there. Just remember that the different types of regulators are specific to a specific gas, and you can't necessarily change them in and out. So oxygen regulator may be different than a acetylene regulator, and just make sure you don't switch those because they won't work. And you'll generally find out, the second point there, that the regulator and the valve fittings, there'll be different threads on them, so they may not be compatible if you're using the wrong regulator. Also, there's something called a check valve, which you've probably heard of. There are check valves that you can put in a line in case you have a concern or worry about backflow. Storage, the most important thing about storage, and certainly something that OSHA writes a lot of people up about, is that the flammable gases should be separate from the oxygen. The problem is that those two, typically if you're doing welding, you have welding gases, those two cylinders are often stored together, but they need to be kept separate. The other point here is make sure that any flammable gases are kept away from any sort of area where there's flames or open sparks. Acetylene, the way acetylene is stored is actually a solution in acetone, and if you tip the cylinder over, then like bad things happen. The acetone comes out, other things. So any kind of acetylene cylinder, really almost any cylinder, should be kept up and down and not on its side. Particularly, that's a concern for acetylene. Oxygen cylinders, we talked about that, should not be the same place as flammable gases. And there it's an example of the distance. So 20-foot distance is a good distance to keep them apart. And also on oxygen cylinders, grease and oil shouldn't be stored around the oxygen or on the fittings for the oxygen cylinder, because the oxygen will react with the grease or the oil. And then just make sure that you keep your empty cylinders and your full cylinders in different areas and keep them marked. Then when they're empty, just make sure they go back to the supplier so that we, first of all, can get credit for them, and second of all, so we don't have a bunch of empty cylinders sitting around. And then PPE, you should use safety glasses, preferably safety glasses and a face shield when you're hooking up a gas cylinder or disconnecting a gas cylinder, because you can't get the pressure into your face. Just a little bit about hazardous liquids and gases. The biggest concerns, I think, are fuels. So just remember, gasoline can definitely catch on fire. It's combustible and flammable. It has that gasoline smell. It will burn your skin, so just don't use it as a solvent or a cleaner. And to make sure that you keep lighted matches and open flames away from your gasoline. That's all we have today for hazardous liquids and gases and compressed gases. If you have any questions, you can let me know or let your plant manager know. Thanks.